Good morning, everyone. For today, we will be talking about Key File 1015 or file naming conventions. To start with, let's understand why we need to use file naming conventions. We should be using it not just because we were required to, but using this will help us stay organized. Some of the benefits that we will be getting from using this are the following. If we have file naming conventions, files will be distinguished easily from one to another, and it will be easier to browse. Naming our files in a consistent, logical, and predictable way will help us locate the information or the file in no time, and will help us retrieve it as quickly as possible. As long as the file name describes what the document is about and it is classified, at a glance we can easily identify it, making it easier to browse more effectively and efficiently. Hence, we are saving time and we're saving efforts simultaneously. Moving on, in this slide, you will see the file naming conventions that we have for Cloud Staff. The first one is the IMS or Integrated Management System naming convention. This is being followed for documentation that is already controlled, meaning it is already reviewed, approved, and registered. And we are using this format. So we are using prefix, then space, sequential number, work instruction number, if it is work instruction, then space, and lastly, the document title. As you can see in the sample here, PM is the prefix, 1001 is the sequential number, point 1 is the work instruction number, then how to save a name version is the document title. You might be wondering, where will you get those prefixes, sequential numbers, or work instruction numbers? These unique identifiers are available from our prefix custodian, Jeff DL. You just need to reach out to her to register your documentation once it is approved. The next that we have here is the format for record. So as you can see, the format would be document title, then space, dash, space, the information classification of the document. Here in this sample, you can see flag and carlag as the document title, then confidential is the data classification. So this time, you might be wondering what information classification should I use? In the next slides, I'll be talking more about the 7 information classifications that we have. So we'll talk about the information classification matrix. First off is the CPO or concerned personnel only. This is used only for records which are restricted to personnel who are concerned with a matter, meaning the access to that information is only limited to them. Sample would be the tickets that you have in Uber tickets, your personal information or 201 files. These are records and can only be accessed by individuals who are concerned with the matter. Next is the restricted. So this is used only when the information could cause a significant level of risk upon unauthorized disclosure, alteration, or destruction. These are sensitive information intended only for those with a business need to know. So access is to be restricted to a small number of individuals, such as bank account passwords, security system design documents, etc. The third one is confidential. This one is similar to restricted. However, this is somewhat can be shared to a bigger audience like business units. Of course, taking in mind that they have business need to know. Compared to restricted, which is just for a small number of individuals, at least this one is a bigger audience. Samples are financial information, proprietary documents, or contracts with customers, and the like. Next, we'll be discussing the remaining four. So the fourth one is AllHub. So when we say AllHub, the information related to cloud staff is intended just only for AllHub and should not be released to the public or clients or those cloud staffers engaged by them. Samples are internal or commercially sensitive policies, operational procedures, etc. Next on the list is all cloud staffers. So this is used when the information related to cloud staff is expected to be also shared with the clients. Samples are corporate memos, policies, and operational procedures where the scope is for all cloud staffers. In terms of risk, if the unauthorized disclosure or alteration or distraction could result in a moderate level of risk, then this will fall under all hub and all cloud staffers. On the sixth, we have all prospects or commercial in confidence. These are materials which may place cloud staff at a disadvantage commercially in negotiations if publicly known. These are available to all hub, but in particular to information that has been made available to prospects to facilitate the sales process. But take note that this is not generally available to the broader public. So if the information is intended for the broader public, then it should be classified as public. And that is the last one. So the seventh category that we have is public. This is used when the information is for public dissemination. These are information that are readily available to the public, such as RCS website or our CloudStaff website, CloudStaff Facebook, and the like. Now, let's move on to the next slide. So let's talk about information handling. Information should be handled according to its classification. So, since we have the seven categories, so for CPO or concerned personnel only, any records with this classification should be secured by the document owner in an electronic or physical repository. So for both restricted and confidential, the data source should be or should ensure appropriate access or distribution level is followed. And if you are the recipient, you need to make sure that the electronic information should be password protected, or if it's an electronic information, it should be password protected. Information is encrypted, and for paper documents, it should be kept in a locker with a key. In terms of transmission, this will be applicable to all the three. So if it's internal, we need to use a sealed envelope inside an internal mail envelope, and if possible, we should hand deliver it. Then for external, you just use a plain sealed envelope and hand deliver it or send it through registered mail or courier. While for electronic, please do not use email. Seek security advice from NSOC or our Network and Security Operations Center, care of Arvin C. before transmission. And then let's talk about disposal or destruction. So if we are this if we'll be disposing it, we need to make sure that we are using paper shredder for hard copies. Actually, we recommend using it or using at least the crosscut shredders for security purposes. While for soft copy, it depends on where the information is stored. I'll cite some examples. Let's say for let's say for those that are stored in Google Workspace, we can do data override, reformat storage if it's in local network drive, and physical destruction if it's in if it's in external storage device. Next will be for all hub, all cloud staffers, and commercial in confidence or all prospects. The source is the one responsible for proper markings, and if you are the recipient, you will be responsible for the proper storage as well as the document control. Transmission will be the same for the three categories. So if it's internal, just use an internal mail envelope or deliver it to the appropriate recipient with acknowledgement. If external, use a sealed envelope. And for electronic, you can just use your internal mail to send to the appropriate recipient. But you need to make sure that it is encrypted. Then for disposal or destruction, this will be the same with what we have discussed for the first three categories. So for hard copies, destruction using paper shredder, and for soft copy, it depends on where the information is stored. However, for public, there will be no restrictions here since these are intended for public consumption. Next is our last slide. Okay, so for our last slide, we will be discussing simple rules. First off, keep your file name short and meaningful. File name should be kept as short as possible and at the same time should be meaningful. Long file names will increase the likelihood of error and are more difficult to remember. Next one is avoid unnecessary repetition and redundancy in your file names. Unnecessary repetition increases the length of the file names, which is incompatible with what we have discussed earlier. Next is file should be named consistently and understood by everyone. So this is pretty straightforward. If email messages should not be forwarded or shared, please make sure to indicate do not forward or do not copy in the subject line or body of the email. Next, provide access to data only to individuals with a business need for the information. So keep in mind the least privilege principle. This refers, or when we say least privilege principle, this refers to an information security concept in which a user is given the minimum levels of access or permissions needed to perform his job functions. So if they just need to check or if they just need to see what's the content of of that document or that file, it should just be view access instead of editor access. As much as possible, use Google Groups when provisioning access and not individual usernames. It'll be easier to manage who has access to your information. Then next, make sure to follow the appropriate file naming convention as what we have discussed in the earlier slides. And take note of this. So any file that does not include the classification is automatically considered confidential. Then lastly, please refer to information, classification, and handling matrix for more information. That ends my presentation for today. We will be releasing a competency test for this soon, and you will receive an equivalent badge once you have passed the exam. Thank you for listening, and let's keep in mind and be conscious of our file naming conventions, as well as our information classification and handling matrix. Thank you, everyone.